Talking about education, everyone says like that is going to be the growth driver for us in the long term. When we look at Sri Lanka, post-crisis, post-COVID, how are we faring in terms of education?
I think we're in a good space. I mean, post the pandemic, post the crisis, there was a lot of effort put into the world of education, especially higher education and school education as well. A lot of the organizations actually put in a lot of investments in making sure that we were digitalized. The whole education was like, digital accessibility was provided and so on. But then again, we as a country, we have a digital divide as well. So access is not necessarily available across board. So there's a little bit more to do in that sense. Digital literacy is a must in today's world. The technology in the classroom, but also digital literacy as to how to survive in the current digital world, right? Just think back to 2022, when the national exams were delayed. There were a number of other options that came up saying, okay, do the foundation exams,
don't do the A-levels.
Exactly. I believe is not the way forward, because I honestly believe a student's holistic development comes in those 12 to 13 years that they spend in school. It's not only just the education element of it, it's the opportunities that you get to be like a prefect, the extracurricular activities, the clubs and societies that you're going to be a part of, because it's molding you for the future. And then there has also been a lot of focus on skills development, which is really good. So whether it's the corporates, whether it's the educational arm and so on, it was the easiest thing to cut, but that is the investment for the future. So that is something that I believe still needs to be invested on and is not really been done too great. If you've been reading the news, if you've been looking at the newspapers, there's a lot of mental health crisis that's happening.
Yes.
I don't think we are investing enough in that, whether it's the state sector or it's the private sector or even at a school level. I feel there's so much more that can be done.
Good education is the foundation for success. We spoke about all of this and more with Zahara Ansary. Stay tuned.
For 30 years, LMD has been the voice of business in Sri Lanka, capturing the pulse of the nation's corporate landscape through its iconic covers. Each cover tells a story, from the first edition in 1994 to the present day, narrating key moments, leaders and trends that have shaped Sri Lanka's business ecosystem. Over the years, LMD covers have featured thought leaders, business pioneers and game-changing innovations, reflecting the evolution of industries and the economy. As we celebrate 30 years, these covers represent more than just publications. They are a testament to LMD's legacy of excellence in business journalism and its unwavering commitment to being Sri Lanka's leading voice of business. LMD, Sri Lanka's voice of business, a legacy of 30 years.
Hello and welcome to LMDtv. The topic of conversation today is educating Sri Lanka. And I'm here with Zahara Ansary, the country head for Sri Lanka and the Maldives at Cambridge University Press and Assessment. Zahara, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Ruwandi. Thank you for this opportunity.
Talking about education, everyone says like that is going to be the growth driver for us in the long term. When we look at Sri Lanka, post-crisis, post-COVID, how are we faring in terms of education?
I think we're in a good space. I mean, post the pandemic, post the crisis, there was a lot of effort put into the world of education, especially higher education and school education as well. However, I believe we also have a long way to go. A lot of the organizations actually put in a lot of investments in making sure that we were digitalized. The whole education was like, digital accessibility was provided and so on. But then again, we as a country, we have a digital divide as well. So access is not necessarily available across board. So there's a little bit more to do in that sense. And in terms of curriculum adjustments, I have noted that most of the organizations have actually looked at enabling the right education. Like, for example, they've focused on digital education, right? Digital literacy is a must in today's world. So I've seen that coming on board, because it's not just the technology in the classroom, but also digital literacy as to how to survive in the current digital world, right? Then, of course, in terms of student mobility, we actually noticed quite a number of students moving into the fast track routes, the flexible routes, and so on, right? If you just think back to 2022, when the national exams were delayed, there were a number of other options that came up saying, okay, do the foundation exams,
do the A-levels.
Exactly, which deep down, I believe is not the way forward, because I honestly believe a student's holistic development comes in those 12 to 13 years that they spend in school.
The rites of passage.
Exactly, because not only does it's not only just the education element of it, it's the opportunities that you get to be like a prefect, the extracurricular activities, the clubs and societies that you're going to be a part of, because it's molding you for the future. So unfortunately, post-pandemic, post-crisis, there was a move towards this. However, now that we speak to the corporates, we are also hearing that there is a gap in the skills of the people that's come out using those shortcuts and flexible routes, unfortunately. So that is a question mark. So I'm hoping, at least now that the national curriculum exams are coming into place and so on, that would change. And then there has also been a lot of focus on skills development, which is really good. However, I believe there is a gap which was created back then in terms of investment in the faculties and so on.
At school level, you mean? And
at both. Because if people remember, one of the first things that got cut during the crisis was training in people. So whether it's the corporates, whether it's the educational arm and so on, it was the easiest thing to cut, but that is the investment for the future. So that is something that I believe still needs to be invested on and is not really been done too great as well. One of the other things that I'm also seeing is, in a Sri Lankan perspective, if you've been reading the news, if you've been looking at the newspapers, there's a lot of mental health crisis that's happening.
Yes.
So
unparalleled.
Yes, right? I don't think we are investing enough in that, whether it's the state sector or it's the private sector or even at a school level. I feel there's so much more that can be done.
Of course, so much more to do. I mean, I think we are going there, but very slowly. Sarah, when we look at the trends in education today, school level or higher education, what are the trends that you see taking shape in Sri Lanka especially?
Globally, there's quite a lot of things that's changing, and Sri Lanka is not really far behind.
Right.
Luckily, probably because we have a lot of the professional organizations and education organizations present here. So the main thing would be digital transformation. So a lot of the online hybrid learning and all of that is coming, and I think we are there. We've got it here. I've also kind of seen, post COVID and all of that, most of our institutes are also going back into full physical, which has its good and it's bad, because once you get onto the tech, you have to go hybrid.
Go with it, right?
Go with it rather than go back, because then you're going decades back again. And aside from that, I think there's also an interesting phenomenon that's happening in the world. If you look at Sweden, they've decided that they want to move away from digital. They want to move away from digital. So they want to move away from the digital screens and so on. So they want to go back into the papers. So research is now being done on what's the best fit. However, sincerely, I would believe, our hybrid students need to have that digital skills to take them forward. Aside from that, there are interdisciplinary programs that are being focused on, because students of today should have a variety of skills, not just one generic type of skills. In fact, if you Google, there's something called a T diagram, where it's not just one type of skill, but people need to have generic skills. So now the programs are taking into consideration that and creating generic professionals. When it comes to employability, because the end all of all of this is also that, right? Employability and helping people, helping the world. So there is focus being built on what are the skills that are needed for students, for the working professionals of today. So that is being added on to education. So if you look at the 21st century skills like collaboration, communication, and so on, that's extremely critical, and those are now being built into the education. There's also globalization of education that is being focused on. It's not necessarily, traveling to another country to study, but being based right here in Sri Lanka. And sustainability. We all know ESG is like super important, right? So we don't need to wait till they come into the workforce to teach them. Exactly. So a lot of the universities are focusing on ESG and sustainability. So lifelong learning is also another very important element that almost all the schools to the universities and so on are now implementing, because it's not about, what you learned yesterday or, a couple of years back, because that is going to be so outdated. So I always say, what got you to where you are is not going to keep you there, nor is it going to help you move forward, because the entire world is changing,
rapidly, so fast.
Very, very rapidly, right? So you need to keep yourselves updated. So education is changing, and you need to get yourself in line with that as well.
Wow. It's challenging, but I think also it's going to be very rewarding.
Very, very. And it's an exciting time to actually be in education.
Exactly. Lovely. So with all these trends materializing, how can we ensure that the quality is also not compromised? And of course, how can we raise the quality of Sri Lankan education and the results, the students?
There is a lot to be done in that perspective. We have had a lot of pride that our national curriculum is one of the best, right? But like we've discussed, times are changing, things are changing, and we are going into a new world.
Right.
So what we teach in terms of our curriculum also needs to be reformed and changed. So there has to be investment done on that side. Secondly, development of faculty, whether it be the national curriculum or the international curriculum, we need to invest in our teachers. Other than that, from a Sri Lankan perspective, to increase quality, I think industry collaboration is a must. So just last week I was talking to some of the reps from SLASCOM, and I know they're working together with universities and so on to make sure that the right skills are there, the right quality people come into the workforce as well. So that's important. And of course, like we discussed right at the start, some of the spends were cut, right? Like, in training, investments in training and so on. But I believe investments in infrastructure for the universities to the schools and all of that matters to increase the quality, because as an accountant, I would say garbage in, garbage out. We don't want that, right? We want good quality products to come out. So you need to invest
in that input
for that to happen, the ROI to happen. And of course, international collaborations wherever possible. That will also help enhance our quality.
Interesting. Zahara, you mentioned in one of your previous answers about the importance of employability, right? I mean, we say that the final result of higher education and education should be to create future leaders and people who can take our economy and nation forward. How are we faring in this aspect? And you also mentioned job fit. Are we seeing an increase in job fit, and what is that gap and how can we bridge it?
In the past communications that I've had with certain HR heads and so on in the recent past, I do hear that there is a bit of a gap in the kind of graduates that are being created, mainly because most of them have a theoretical understanding but not the practical skills.
Right.
So there is work being done, like I said, SLASCOM has its own programs, various organizations are helping these guys out, and then universities also have their own programs. However, there is more to be done because that skills mismatch is a bit of a problem. And industry relevant training is a must. I know the universities have the internship programs and so on, but those also have to be like practical work, not getting them to do the photocopies or some menial work. It has to be relevant industry proper work, because these guys are our future.
Of course.
if they go out there and if they don't do the right thing, we
are gonna
as
go
a
back.
country are going back.
Yes.
You know, and if we look at it, it's like they are going to set up the future for our children, right? For our country. So we need to, as corporates, as educators, we need to ensure that they get the right skills, skills fit, as well as the right training and so on. Soft skills development is also a must. It's not just about, you know, by hearting something and going out
theories.
there and doing the exams. And also maybe like, you know, very sadly, I'm also noticing that most of the exams in some of the organizations have now become like, you know, assignment based, or, you know, it's life's made so easy, which is not necessarily the right way forward, because they need to be resilient enough to, you know, adapt to whatever the kind of challenges that come their way. Gen Zs are not having it easy. Their life is not easy, I can tell you that, because, I mean, we are millennials, but however, we do understand their life is not easy. But then on the education side, there should not be any cuts on the quality or any aspect. So I believe the more the rigorous training that they get and the right kind of skills, that will help to get the right fit of graduates into Sri Lanka's future. Also, digital literacy. I know we spoke about it, but you know, it's the skills, the know-how, and the whole works. It's not just about, you know, putting something on ChatGPT, getting that reply and going ahead. No, we need to help them understand things. The critical thinking is very, very important in today's day and age. So we don't want them to just copy paste from somewhere, be it social media captions or be it whatever it is. We want them to also think through, go through that whole process, right? Because very recently at this same conference in Delhi, we were seeing how Google showed us a video where this guy with a phone, he goes to his house and he's like, what's my PIN number for the door? So the phone tells him what's the number, and then he's like, okay, he's walking around, how do I get to here, how do I get to there? The phone answers everything.
That's right.
Thinking, if you're not going to be using your brain power, where are you? So yes, tech is good. You need to know when to use tech, how to use tech, maybe even on ChatGPT what prompts to use to get the right answers and so on. And we also need to be globally competitive. We want Sri Lankan talent to be very globally competitive, so we want, you know, them to be properly trained and skilled as well.
It's time now to take a very short break, but we'll soon be back to talk more about education.
Display your brand message on digital screens at prime locations. The largest digital advertising network in Sri Lanka. Emerging Media.
Welcome back to the show. We're in conversation with the country head for Sri Lanka and the Maldives at Cambridge University Press and Assessment, Zahara Ansary. Zahara, I want to ask you your opinions on something that we are increasingly talking about, English tech, English versus tech or English and tech. Like, we always said that having English language skills is a strength because it's a global business language and it's a bridge, a platform. But now we're also seeing conversations coming up saying tech is inclusive, it's language free, you know, all of that. So, two schools of thought. Where should we stand in terms of getting our students, our graduates to possess these skills?
Okay. Not just because I work for Cambridge, which is the largest probably provider of English education, but I sincerely believe this. In a country like ours, if we don't have our English education, we are not going to be able to experience life fully. Right. Why do I say that? All of life's opportunities for our people comes from our communication skills, right? Yeah. Not just for the ones, you know, in the urban, suburban areas, but especially for the ones in the rural area. Right. If you don't have this English skill, you're nowhere. Your life standards, your life status, everything improves with English, right? We've seen it from the school levels, we've seen it across. Even when you go for a interview, if you don't have the right English skills,
You can't get your ideas across.
you're
Yeah?
definitely not going to be considered, right? We don't want everyone to turn out to be, doing the lower skilled jobs. Yes, those are needed, but even in those jobs, you're going to be needing English, right, to work with people and so on. So for me, English is a must, and through English, you can get your digital part covered as well.
Yeah.
Yes, there would be translation mechanisms and so on, but to make the most out of digital, English, lingua franca, it's a must. And one thing that we must also keep in mind is when you have English as a skill, an entire world of opportunities opens up to you. Whether you want to excel in Sri Lanka or whether you want to excel globally, wherever you go, it's going to help you. It's going to help you understand information, things like health, things like financial literacy. All of these are important, right? So having those skills of comprehending what is being said in English, what is being written in English, will be extremely critical and valuable.
Zahara, it's been such a thought-provoking conversation, but sadly we are nearing the end. So if I ask you as a final question, we say the end result of education is self-development as well as development of the nation and of course the world at large. How can we ensure that the talent, the skill development and the educational prosperity of Sri Lanka helps our nation to grow?
So all that we discussed, I mean, the end result is on the graduate, right? On the student who's coming out, and whether that person actually gives back to the community, gives back to the country. So yes, I'm not against, people going overseas and expanding their horizons and perhaps coming down and then, delivering. To be honest, back when I was working in WNS, I think back in the 2004s and 5s, I loved that exposure that I got, where I got to work in UK, in London, York, and so on. Because we were able to experience a different world, different technology, the best at that time, and then we were able to come back here and implement those, the new processes to think, all those things. So yes, a segment will have to go, bring those back in and so on. But for the rest, I believe we, from an educator's perspective also, we need to get them into the workforce quite early, even whilst they're studying, maybe give them the practical exposure and so on. And even the corporate leadership. We see a lot of mentoring programs and so on happening, right? So that needs to continue and maybe at an enhanced level. Because the younger ones need to see that there are opportunities for them to not only be inspired by these people, but also similar to them to give back to community. Civic education is also a must.
We undermine it so much.
We do, unfortunately we do, but maybe through curriculum subjects like social studies. So even in our Cambridge curriculum we have that, for them to understand how it impacts and how they can actually give back. So that's important. And leadership development, maybe with the corporates or looking at the right kind of leadership as well. Give them opportunities to grow. Maybe those clubs and societies that I was talking about earlier will also kind of help them to get that understanding right at the start, be it in a school level or in a grad level, undergrad level and so on, and then contribute back. One other key area that I think is also important in our graduates is an entrepreneurial mindset. It's not just about, qualifying, certifying and then going and work in the corporates. We need new solutions, new ideas, there are lots of things that can be improved even in a Sri Lankan context, even right now. Sometimes, maybe if you look back into the COVID period, most of those new ventures that came were not from the corporates, right? It was from individuals who saw the need, maybe even delivery of ready to eat food packs, like the meal packs where you could make it at home. There were lots of such things, right? So we need to get our younger ones also used to that whole entrepreneurial mindset where they can come up with these things. So they can actually come into the work world, come into that the next step after their education, and then implement those things to help not just themselves but the country's economy as well. And maybe, you know, alumni involvement when it comes to the universities and so on, because they can also help the undergrads. And finally, government and policy level changes are also required to make the best out of our graduates. It's not just, you know, churning out the grads
But
and
to
then
make sure it's a circular kind of
correct, getting them the right, I'm re-emphasizing this, the right skills, the right opportunities, because we don't want them to be unemployed as well, right? If I may just add one point from a personal perspective as a female, we all know that only about 30% of females are in the workforce, right? It's high time that number goes up, and unfortunately I think a Daily Mirror report a couple of years back showed that more than 50% of our ladies who qualified in the university actually stayed back because there was no childcare support, there was no variety of things hindering them to get into the workforce. I know there were things that were planned in the budget and all of that in terms of childcare centers and all of that.
Right.
Trust me, if we get that right, at least another 10% of the women will come into the workforce. It's going to help our economy as well. Because why it matters is some of those undergrads who are right now in the universities, if they're also going to face the same problems,
It's sad. Yes.
they're also going to end up being unemployed. And that is, you know, opportunity for Sri Lanka to earn the dollars that we want, right? Or, you know, to have the opportunity to increase the entire economy, the well-being of this nation and future generations.
So much potential just lying to be tapped. Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We've been in conversation with the country head for Sri Lanka and the Maldives at Cambridge University Press and Assessment, Zahara Ansary. Thank you very much for a very insightful, thought-provoking discussion.
Thank you once again for the invitation.
And thank you to all our viewers for joining us. Until next time, take care.
Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram and X. Thank you for watching and stay safe.